What's up, guys? MCMMA here, and today I'm going to be matchmaking the lightweight division. I think this is a good time to do it, coming off of Charles Oliveira's win over Mateusz Gamrot at the UFC Rio fight night last weekend. And on top of that, we've gotten a little more clarity in the division as well, with Arman Sarukian finally getting a fight booked, and a couple other matchups that have been booked both within the top 15 and like right outside of it. So I figured now would be a good time to matchmake the rest of the top 15, and let's get into it. Before I get into the top 15 fighters, I just wanted to include this unranked fight between Fares Ziam and Nazim Sadikov that is going to be taking place at UFC 323. Also, just as a note, the fights that are in green have already been announced, so I just wanted to include that for some clarity. But I think that the winner of this fight will definitely be getting a top 15 opponent, especially if it's Fares Ziam. I honestly think that Ziam already deserves a top 15 opponent. He's in like a 5-fight win streak. He's coming off a couple good wins against Matt Frevola and Mike Davis. So I think that he should be getting a top 15 fight, but we know, especially in like the 10 through 15 range of the lightweight rankings, it's kind of confusing. There's a lot of guys who don't want to fight down, and this is the matchup that we've got. I think this is going to be a sick fight. I'm going to lean towards Fares Ziam since, I know Nazim Sadikov is one of the most entertaining fighters in the UFC, but he's more of a brawler, and Ziam is very technical, so I think that he should be able to outclass Sadikov. But this is going to be a sick fight, and the winner of this should definitely be getting a ranked opponent. All right, moving on to our first ranked fighter. I think that number 15 ranked Mauricio Rufy should fight Ignacio Bahamondes next. First off, I have no idea how Rufy is ranked. He has 3 UFC wins, and 2 of them are against barely UFC level fighters in Jamie Malarkey and James Yontop. I know Yontop's already out of the UFC. I think Malarkey might be too. If not, he's probably on his way. And his only real win was a knockout over Bobby Green. And at this point in Bobby Green's career, he's getting finished by absolutely everybody. So that's not a very impressive win. And he just got steamrolled by Benoit Saint Denis at the Paris fight night. Honestly, I think Bahamondes should probably be ranked over him. Bahamondes, he did recently lose to Rafael Fiziev at the Azerbaijan fight night, but before that, he was on a good run. He's got a really good win over Manuel Torres, who we will be seeing shortly in this matchmaking video. But aside from my personal thoughts on these rankings, I think that this would be a sick fight. These guys are both very dynamic strikers, long, rangy strikers, and I think if you match the two up against each other, it would be an amazing fight to watch since they're both super entertaining. So I think that this should be next for Mauricio Rufy and Ignacio Bahamondes. All right, next up, we have got number 14, Grant Dawson versus unranked Manuel Torres. This fight just got announced for, I believe it is UFC 323, the December pay-per-view in Vegas. Grant Dawson just gets screwed consistently. This guy's 11-1 in the UFC, and he's still having to face unranked opposition consistently just because, I get that he has a fairly boring style, but he just gets screwed by Dana and Hunter Campbell, very, very frequently. And, this is a pretty tough opponent. Manuel Torres fights like he's got rabies, and he's coming off that vicious knockout over Drew Dober at the Mexico City fight night earlier in the year. So I would lean towards Dawson in this matchup, but we know he's got a lot of holes in his striking game, as seen with his first-round knockout, or when he got knocked out in the first round by fucking Bobby Green of all people. So I think this is a pretty high risk, low reward matchup for him, but he did take the fight, so we'll see how this one plays out in a couple months. Next up, we've got another fight that has already been booked. We've got number 13, Benoit Saint Denis versus number 9, Beneil Dariush. I believe this one is going to be at the Madison Square Garden pay-per-view, UFC 322, which is headlined by Islam Makhachev versus Jack Della Maddalena. I think this is a pretty good matchup. Benoit, we know he's a guy that the UFC was trying to push pretty heavily, as evidenced by getting booked against Dustin Poirier a couple years ago. But he's got he's picked up back-to-back wins. The first one was against Kyle Prepolek, who's the fucking can, but that was in short notice, so you can't really blame Benoit for that one. And then he just did steamroll Mauricio Rufy at the Paris Fight Night, and I think he was a pretty decent underdog for that one. So that is a good win. He really just imposed his will on Rufy, walked him down, took him down with ease, and submitted him in the second round. So I think that this is an appropriate step up for Benoit. In terms of my thoughts on this fight itself, I think this is probably one of the best matchups you can make for a guy like Beneil Dariush, just because of how bad Benoit's striking is. I mean, Dariush, he's still got the skills. He's still a very skilled all-around fighter, especially in terms of his ground game, but his chin is so awful nowadays. I mean, he got dropped by fucking Renato Moicano of all people in his last fight. And I know he ended up winning that one, but that's a really bad look to get dropped by Moicano. But Benoit's not a good striker, so I think this one plays into Dariush's hands, and I think that he should be able to handle Benoit's grappling pressure, and I would lean towards Beneil by decision in this one. But I think this is a good matchup, and I'm excited to see how this one plays out. Next up, Michael Chandler. I think that he should fight Conor McGregor next. I know this might be wishful thinking on my part, but I do genuinely think that Conor McGregor wants to come back for the White House card. I think that's like the one thing at this point that could motivate him to actually come back and fight in the UFC. And I know Michael Chandler's totally washed at this point, and in no way does he deserve to be ranked, but he has been waiting for this fight for like 3 years at this point. Chandler's washed, but Conor is also going to be probably just as washed, if not more washed, given that he hasn't fought in like 4-something years. And Chandler has been waiting for this fight for a long time, so I think this would be a fair matchup to make. Definitely put this one on the White House card. I think if they were to put it on this card, it would probably headline. But I know this might be a little unrealistic, but I really do think that Conor wants to come back for the White House card. So I think that they should make this fight happen at 170 too, because there's no way Conor is going to come back at lightweight, given all the steroids that he's been on since his last fight. All right, next up, we've got another ranked versus unranked matchup, and I think that number 11 ranked Renato Moicano should fight Nasrat Haqparast. Moicano's kind of in a weird spot right now. He fought Benoit, he fought Beneil Dariush, he's fought a decent number of the guys. He fought Rafael Viziev. He's fought like a decent number of the guys in like the 10 to 15 range, kind of around his ranking. And I think with the way that the other matchups have played out, he probably does need to fight an unranked fighter. And I think out of the unranked fighters that aren't booked already, I think Haqparast is the most deserving one. I believe he's on a 6-fight win streak right now, and his last 2 wins are both good wins over Jared Gordon and especially the Esteban Ribovic wins. I know a lot of people think that he didn't win both of those fights, honestly. I personally scored the Ribovic fight for Haqparast. I thought that he won the first and second rounds. Jared Gordon fight, Jared Gordon probably won that, but I mean, again, it was the judge's call, and on his record, it shows as a win for Nasrat. So he's on a good run. He's picked up some quality unranked wins, and I think that he deserves a shot at the top 15. And I think that in terms of unranked fighters that Moicano could face, I think this is one of the more favorable matchups for him, since Nasrat isn't like an absolute killer who's on like a crazy finish streak, like a lot of the unranked lightweights are right now. So I know Moicano thinks that he shouldn't be fighting an unranked guy, but I think that he has to, and I think that this is a matchup that works out pretty favorably for both of these fighters. All right, getting into the top 10, I think that number 10 ranked Rafael Fiziev should fight number 8 Mateusz Gamrot. These two already fought once, as many of you may know. This was the fight in which Fiziev tore his ACL in the second round, so I mean, it doesn't really count. So I think that given where both of these guys are at, Fiziev was on a 3-fight losing streak, but I mean, it was 3 like fairly questionable losses. The first Gaethje fight was very close. You could score that one for Fiziev. Obviously, after that, he blew out his knee against Gamrot, which wasn't really his fault. And then his most recent loss was, again, to Justin Gaethje, but that was also a fight that he took on very short notice, and it was very competitive. And Gamrot just took the short notice fight against Charles Oliveira. Obviously, we know he got dominated, but he is still a very good fighter in this division, and I think that he deserves somebody in the top 10. Like, he shouldn't keep fighting unranked guys, like when he fought Ludovic Klein before the Gamrot fight. So I think that this is a matchup that makes a lot of sense for both guys, and I would be very interested to see how this one plays out, since we didn't really get to see that in their first matchup. Next up, I have got number 7, Paddy Pimblett. This kind of spoils who I think should fight for the belt, but I think that he should fight the loser of Ilia Topuria versus Justin Gaethje. Paddy, again, is a guy in these rankings who should not be ranked as high as he is. When you really think about it, he doesn't have any good wins, honestly. I mean, beating Michael Chandler in 2025, like, that means almost nothing. Chandler sucks. Same thing with beating Bobby Green. Like, everybody beats him. And, I mean, Tony Ferguson was the one before that. Like, again, the corpse of Tony Ferguson in the midst of his 8-fight losing streak. And the Jared Gordon fight, which on paper is his best win, was a fight that he should have lost, and the judges gifted him that decision. Despite this, I do think that Paddy's a pretty solid fighter, and he is a very big name, so he does deserve to get a big fight. But there's no shot that he should be fighting for the belt right now. I know he's got history with Ilia, but he in no way deserves a title shot coming off wins against Michael Chandler and Bobby Green. So I think that the next best option for him is the loser of Topuria versus Gaethje, since the rest of the top 5 is pretty tied up with other matchups. So I believe that Topuria and Gaethje are likely going to headline the January pay-per-view, the first fight under the UFC's new deal with Paramount. So after that fight, and I know Paddy's not a guy who's really concerned himself with staying active, so I think that he would be fine with waiting for that fight to happen. And after that, he should fight the loser of Topuria versus Gaethje. All right, next up, we have got number 6, Dan Hooker versus number 2, Arman Tsarukyan. This fight was recently announced as the headliner for the UFC Qatar fight night. I'm not too excited by this matchup, just because I think that Arman is going to be able to handle anybody who isn't Ilia Topuria and maybe Max Holloway pretty easily. Don't get me wrong, Dan Hooker is a very good fighter. I mean, that win over Mateusz Gamrot was very impressive. We know he's super tough. We know he always brings the action. He loves a good war, but I think Arman's wrestling is just way too dominant for a guy like Dan Hooker, and I think that he's probably going to maul Dan Hooker on the ground. So the winner of this fight will get the next title shot. So I think that it's good that they're giving Dan a chance, a number 1 contender fight, because I think he does deserve it with the current win streak that he's on. But unfortunately, I do think that Arman will handle him pretty easily. All right, next up, we have got the fighter who fought most recently in Charles Oliveira. And after beating Gamrot, he called for a BMF title fight against Max Holloway in his post-fight interview, and I think that fight makes a ton of sense. Charles, in terms of just fighting for the BMF belt, he's definitely a guy who deserves it. I mean, his style is just all action. He's constantly looking for the finish, constantly pressing forward. I think in this matchup, Charles's striking style will end up hurting him, because, I mean, we saw even against Gamrot was popping him as Charles was kind of recklessly marching forward towards him. And I think against a guy like Max Holloway, especially now that he's at 155, he has clearly packed on some additional power to his striking, and I think that if Charles tries to walk down Max Holloway, it will not end well for him. But aside from that, this would be a great fight. We've been waiting for this rematch for a long time. Obviously, their first fight was 10 plus years ago at this point at featherweight, and Charles tore his esophagus mid-fight, so we didn't get to see how that fight would actually end. And I think this fight makes a ton of sense for both of these guys, the point of their career that they're at. And honestly, if Holloway wins this, he should probably be in line for a title shot. And I think that a rematch between him and Ilya at 155, assuming Ilya is able to beat Justin Gaethje, I think it would be a pretty interesting fight. So I'm all for this fight. I think that it could honestly headline a pay-per-view on its own. I know Max Holloway said that he wanted to have a pay-per-view in Honolulu. I don't know if the UFC is going to do that just because they don't really have like a pay-per-view sized venue there, I don't think. And there's not a lot of other like Hawaiian fighters that they could really put on there. But Max Holloway is a legend, so I could see them potentially doing that. And regardless of if this fight is in Hawaii or Brazil or wherever, it's going to be an amazing fight. And I think I speak for all of the UFC fans when I say that we will be looking forward to this one. And last but not least, I have got what I think not necessarily should be, but what I think will be the next lightweight title fight. And I think it's going to be number 5 ranked Justin Gaethje versus the current lightweight champion, Ilia Topuria. If you look at the current win streak that Gaethje is on, you probably wouldn't think that he deserves a title shot since he's got one win right now. He's got a 1-win streak and it was against number 10 Rafael Fiziev on short notice. But I do somewhat understand Gaethje's argument about that he thinks that he's really on like a 3-fight win streak because the Max Holloway fight. I know he's been calling it an exhibition fight. I do get where he's coming from there. That fight basically had zero benefit to him, and he only took that because I don't know if some of you guys might have forgotten, but at that point, UFC 300 was looking pretty bleak. That was before they had announced the Alex Pereira headliner, and Dana and Hunter were getting pretty desperate, so I'm sure they gave Justin Gaethje a bag to take that fight, but he took a pretty much no reward fight against Max Holloway. As we know, got knocked out in spectacular fashion. But before that fight, he was on a 2-fight win streak against Rafael Fiziev and Dustin Poirier, both of which are very good wins, and he is 3-1 in his last 4. So you can make the argument that he deserves a title shot, and especially if Arman Tsarukyan has already gotten booked for another fight, I think Gaethje is the next best option. So I think that this fight will happen next, even if he doesn't. Some of you may think he doesn't necessarily deserve it, but I think it is going to be what's next. In terms of how the fight is going to play out, I think he's going to get slumped badly in the first round. I mean, his striking defense is just not very good, and against a guy as surgical and powerful as Ilya, you just can't have bad defense. So I think Ilya is going to knock him out badly in the first round, and then after that, I think the matchup between him and Arman is going to be next, which I think is probably the most interesting title fight that you can make right now. But yeah, that's pretty much all I've got. Let me know in the comments whether you agree or disagree with any of these fights that I've come up with. And also, let me know if you've got any ideas for future videos because I would appreciate any of the feedback. All right, thank you guys and have a great day.